Hey there, I'm Frank Mitchell. On this channel, it's all about helping you understand your car and keeping it running the way it should. Whether it's routine maintenance or solving those tricky problems, I've got you covered. If you find this useful, give the video a like, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to watch till the end. You might learn something that saves you time and money. All right, let's get started.
We know that the price of second-hand cars has risen, dragged by the inertia of the market, and that if you need to buy something relatively affordable, you can see it really complicated unless you get minimally demanding with the needs. B-label cars are beginning to belong to the group of privileged cars that are not yet banned from certain areas of large cities. Although low-emission zones, ZBE, are usually reserved for cars with ECO and zero labels. Such is the bidding for the labels that there are owners of cars sold or manufactured in 1999 whose vehicle already complies with the Euro 3 emissions regulations and that, therefore, with a relatively simple procedure they can obtain the B label if it has not been granted by the DGT by default. Best gasoline cars with label B. In CarWow we have been thinking, what car would we buy if we were looking for something with a B label that gives me a certain sense of guarantee and does not go up in price? Well, the truth is, less than we expected, but here you have 5 gasoline cars of all life, belonging to 5 different segments, which can solve the problem and whose reliability and overall performance are frankly satisfactory. Here is a list of 5 alternatives that include a utility, a compact, a mid-size sedan, an SUV, and a small MPV. Nissan Micra. We know that we will not find many fans of this model as far as aesthetics is concerned, probably because it belongs to a time when Nissan abandoned the traditional design of its models that gave such good results during the 90s. But that does not make the Micra launched in 2003 as a bad product. Quite the contrary. Precisely because it is a car that not many think of when it comes to looking for a cheap urban, if you opt for either of the two versions of gasoline, 1.4 of 88 horsepower or the later 1.4 of 80 horsepower, you will not go wrong. Both move the Micra with a fluency that many current 3-cylinder turbocharged engines would like, not that the current weight of the cars does not help with a derisory consumption. In addition, you will have a passenger compartment perfectly used in space in relation to the small size of the body, 3.72 m. Volkswagen Golf 4. This was the last generation of Golf with traditional design, that is, it retained the style of the previous 3 generations. Between 1997 and 2003 it was a sales success, not because it was the best in its category in absolute terms, it was competing strongly against the Ford Focus and its excellent chassis, the Audi A3, which was the posh brother in some cars as dynamically solvent as the Alfa Romeo 147 or the BMW 3 Series Compact, but because in its overall balance was its greatest attraction. Euro 3 gasoline units can be found from the year 2000 onwards. Among the gasoline versions you had engines with between 75 and 241 horsepower, but our recommendation goes for the 150 horsepower 1.8 turbo engine. Of the normal GTI versions, there was a 180 horsepower gasoline GTI edition and also a turbo diesel, but these are rara avis. Reliable, fast, capable of offering very reasonable consumption nowadays and with a very pleasant driving feel. A unit in good condition, although with some mileage, you can find it in the vicinity of 3,000 or 4,000 euros. Honda Accord. Talking about Honda and gasoline engines is usually synonymous with success, although not always, necessarily. Without going any further, the generation prior to our recommendation never stood out for this detail. But in 2003 Honda launched an Accord that not only gave a big qualitative leap, but also has stood the test of time very well. Aesthetically simple, elegant, and well-proportioned, it also had the advantage of offering a large trunk, 459L, and a well-finished and spacious cabin. Although if money is not an issue, we find the 190 horsepower 2.4 engine option ideal. You won't go wrong with the 155 horsepower 2.0 either. It's not a particularly frugal engine in consumption, what naturally aspirated sedan engine was at that time. But if you want a robust, reliable, comfortable car that stays in 30 figures, between 3,500 and 6,000 euros you can find. Good units, it is difficult to go wrong with the Accord. Toyota RAV4A gasoline SUV does not seem, a priori, the best way to save. But we assume that you are looking for this type of car because you value mechanical simplicity, you do not plan to do many kilometers. And you are tired of seeing diesel SUVs with exorbitant prices and mileage. Well, in the second generation RAV4 you have an excellent ally, especially in its 3-door variant, with its meager 3.72 m in length. It still retained that coquettish, relatively trim and simple air with which it won the public in the mid-90s after the arrival of the first generation, but this model, which already enjoys label B, is a little more spacious and practical, and less collection. Which is what begins to be the first series. The available engines were a 128 horsepower 1.8 and a 150 horsepower 2.0, and although the more powerful version is the more appetizing, we advise you to go for the unit in better condition first and foremost. We're not going to lie, we have not found practically nothing under 6,000 euros, but is that the simple SUVs and years are on the rise. Audi A2 an absolute misunderstood that today begins to be valued as it should, at a time when cars do not stop growing in size and weight. The Audi A2 presented some cutting-edge solutions that 20 years ago would have sounded like science fiction, a minivan of less than 4 meters, 3.82 m, with aluminum bodywork, barely 1,000 kilograms of weight, ultra-efficient aerodynamics, and gasoline engines with direct injection, not all. This was the presentation letter of this small object of desire that today, if you browse the pages of second-hand, you will find. For very varied prices, from about 2,000 to more than 6,000 euros. Its biggest advantage is the consumption, very content, a good amplitude for height, not so much for width, and solutions to make life easy in everyday life, especially if you're going to move in urban environments. The trunk is correct for its size, with between 350 and 390 liters. In conclusion, these 5 B-label gasoline cars stand out not only for their efficiency but also for their performance and reliability. Each model offers a unique blend of features that cater to different driving needs, making them excellent choices for anyone in the market for a new vehicle. Whether you prioritize fuel economy, comfort, or technology, there is a recommendable option here for you. Thank you for watching, and we hope this guide helps you make an informed decision on your next car purchase.